Just take a breath, right? Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thought we could spend just the first 10 minutes just getting to know each other a little bit. So I thought maybe we could just go around the room, introduce yourself, what your position is, so that everyone knows who's at the table, and maybe just a little statement as to why you're interested in serving on this committee. What is your interest in that? That would be really helpful. Sarah, do you want to begin?
Sure, I'll start with Sarah Sims. I am the principal at the middle school. I think it's an important discussion. We see all the time the cell phone battles in the schools, and I know even as a parent of 5, I see the battle myself with my own kiddos, and trying to limit it. I think it's important for us to talk about it and the impact it is having on our kids and their education and those things, and try to see if we can come up with some solutions on how to support them. I'll pass it to you now.
All right. My name is Kristen Bingaman. I am a parent. I have a 5th grader in middle school next year. My background is in healthcare, so I've been in healthcare for maybe 20 years. So I think I look at it from that perspective. And thinking about what it does to our brains and our mental health. That being said, I also feel like I've been on the other side of like policies that have been created and then expected to be carried out by like the people on the floor that maybe are not necessarily super realistic. So I think it's I don't know, I'm just really interested to kind of hear everyone's perspective, and yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm Sage Scully. I am a student rep on the board, and I'm also a senior at the high school. And I am interested in serving on this community because I want to be able to give the committee student perspective, but also go back to the students and tell them like accurately, have an accurate report. And I also think it is a really interesting issue because I think I can see both sides of it. Like, I understand why kids want to keep their phone, and I understand why some kids think they deserve to keep their phone, like the honors kids and the AP kids. But I also know how difficult it is for teachers and stuff. My mom's a teacher, so I just think it'll be really interesting what decision we come to.
Great, thank you. Pat Hopkins, superintendent. In this last year, there's just been such growing research about the impact that cell phones, it's not just cell phones, it's really that smartphones, right, and social media are having on our kids. So it's the impact of mental health. It's the distraction in the classroom that is taking away from their academic program. And it really felt like we're at a place. We're at a place as a school district where we need to engage in a conversation to decide what do we want to do, what do we value, what do we believe in. And I think that there are 2 sides to the issue. There is the and 2 options, right? There's the side of students, kids, adults, we all use cell phones, right? And we use social media. So maybe we should be allowing them to still access the smartphones and just teach them how to use it responsibly, right? And then there's the other side because of the distractions and the issues that it creates in the building, because we certainly are seeing an increase in student behavior as a result of conversations that occur outside of the school on social media, that we should just give our kids a break from that access to that social media during school days. So there's a belief that both sides are correct and are in the best interest of students. So I'm really interested in us engaging in this conversation and listening to our community to find out how we feel the use of social media and cell phones in the school should be handled in MSAD11. There's also the safety, I won't even go there, about if there's an emergency, that issue.
Hi, I'm Angela Hardy. I'm the Director of Curriculum here. And I have two teenagers, 16 and 19. So I feel like I've been dealing with this in my home for a number of years now. I understand like the parent perspective. I'm trying to think about it as an educator, trying to think about it as a system. So I'm really curious about how other people feel and what, where we'll land on this topic. I'm trying to keep an open mind to see how this evolves. So thanks for being here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Could I interject just briefly? I want to make sure that everyone knows, because this is a school board ad hoc committee, this meeting is being live streamed. So just so you know, we are being recorded so that members of the public who are interested in this topic, they will be able to go back and watch this meeting and be able to learn from our discussion. So after the meeting is over, the recorded version will be placed on our website. So I want to do that for full disclosure. If anyone is uncomfortable with that, please let me know. And I'm sorry, I meant to mention that at the very beginning, so.
Where's the camera?
There's a camera right up there.
Okay.
That's right there, I'll get my hamburger.
This
Okay, I got
is
you.
the microphone.
Okay.
And it's extremely sensitive. So if I were to whisper to Sage, the microphone might pick it up. So we just need to be mindful of that. So, all right, thank you, Kara.
Okay, I'm Kira Blodgett. I'm a senior at the, I'm not a senior, I'm a junior at the high school. And like as Sage said, I'm here because I want to help with the student perspective on this and make sure everyone knows like what students are thinking. Even though there's so many different perspectives in the student body. And also as Sage said, I also want to help the students know what's going on in this committee, and because I know it's a really hot topic at our school, so I feel like it's important for students to know what's actually happening and what we're talking about. And I'm also really interested in this topic to see where we land.
Beth Brooker, school social worker at the high school, as well as a parent of a sophomore at the high school. I am interested in this topic for a lot of reasons as a parent and the social worker, and as Pat mentioned, there's just so much research going on about youth and the cell phones. One of the most interesting ones I saw recently is they did a comparison of like, if you take a youth's cell phone away, it to them equates to the same as like losing a limb. It has become such a part of who they are and their identity. And so I do think that it would be beneficial to give them a break from that and let them know like there is life outside of the phone and that you can survive without it. And also just all the drama and the social media and all of that, as well as the way that it impacts education, because there's all the programs that they can access that are, shortcuts or kind of cheats to getting work done, and it's impacting education in that way. There's just so many different ways that it impacts learning and the school environment.
Hi there, Laura Redis. I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler. So sort of got all the range going on. My background, previously I worked in higher ed administration. I was actually a conduct officer, so saw some of the things that happen on social media and with technology. So I'm sort of interested in from that perspective. I currently work in corrections, and so I'm thinking about it in sort of two different ways. One is about training, and we're seeing we're dealing with a new generation of folks who grew up with technology and especially use it a lot now. And we're seeing some of perhaps the deficits that have come as part of that with new hires and that sort of thing. So I'm thinking about it a little bit in that realm as well. And of course, as a parent, and I've tended to be fairly conservative with 2 out of 3 of my kids don't have a cell phone. So I've been fairly conservative on that. So I share some of your concerns, but I also know that like I'd like to be able to get in touch with my kid if he'll read or actually respond to the texts, right? He reads them, it's the response is the problem. So and I just enjoy policy work in general.
I'm Jared Dumas. I am one of the assistant principals at Gardner Area High School. I've been there for 6 years. I was a social studies teacher before that. I'm a parent. I have an 18-year-old and a 12-year-old. I think my interest in being on this committee is helping to determine where we're going as a district in terms of policy. I think I see as well as anyone the kind of that negative side of the phones in schools, because it is connected so closely to issues such as distraction during academic time, peer conflict. It can involve bullying and harassment that starts outside of school, that comes into school, that starts in school, that goes out of school. But also technology is a really important aspect of the work that we're doing at the high school, and with the advent and the expansion of tools like AI and other learning tools, figuring out where cell phones and where technology fits in our building is something I'm really curious about. So I'm excited to be part of the work.
Great, thank you. Thank you to everyone. We are missing a few members of our committee today, just so you are aware. Megan Carlson, who is a school board member and a parent. And I'm guessing she was pulled away for some other matters. And Alyssa Tracy, who is a school board member and a parent, and she's working out of state today. And Frida Kaiser, who is one of our elementary teachers at LER, Laura E. Richards. She's also a parent and a coach. And she is coaching this afternoon and unfortunately couldn't be here. So that makes up our committee. Thought probably 12 people was probably enough to have on the committee, but certainly the hope is that we're going to spend some time reaching out to other stakeholders to make sure that we pull in their thoughts, their opinions, and involve and use that information to help us make some decisions moving forward. Anything else in terms of introductions? Anything I missed or didn't think of? Okay. Then I thought we should spend just a few minutes kind of talking about the purpose of the committee. I feel like we've already done that a bit, right? We really need to look at what is happening in our schools with our student population. You guys have mentioned, Jared, you were really talking about the distraction that it creates in the classroom and outside of the classroom, the increase in some behavior issues and some conflict at the high school as a result of the use of social media. And what will happen is that we will have students using social media in a classroom or in a hallway or during lunch, and then that communication will upset someone else, and then that creates a fallout within the building that impacts other students, impacts administration, impacts staff. So we want to make sure that that is something that we take into consideration, is how do we potentially limit or modify policies around the use of social media and our cell phones to prevent those distractions, to make sure that the focus goes back in on instruction and academics. So the purpose is to really do all of that research. Let's really find out what the professionals are saying. We have other school districts throughout the state who have already made some of these decisions moving forward, and some have decided to completely ban the use of cell phones during the school day. When they arrive, they have to turn their phone in, and when they leave, they get their phone back. You have other school districts that haven't done that. They're kind of using a model very similar to what we're using, is that the cell phone cannot be used in the classroom unless the teacher wishes to use the cell phone for instructional purposes, right? But other than that, it's supposed to be put away, but students are able to use it in the hallway, lunch, those common places. Other schools are choosing to do that because they want to teach the students how to appropriately use their cell phone. I mean, the reality is they're going to use cell phones once they leave school. So isn't it going to be better for them in the long run if they learn how to appropriately use social media? So that's the purpose, and the intended outcome is for us to collaboratively kind of sift through all of that research, gather information from our stakeholders, and then make a recommendation to the school board. Ultimately, it's the decision will be the school board's, not ours. So whenever we're ready, it may be spring, I'm not sure. Whenever we're ready, we'd be looking at maybe doing a presentation to the school board, encapsulating our study, our research, what have we done, this is what we've learned, and therefore, based on X, Y, Z, this is our recommendation. How does that sound reasonable, doable? Okay, all right. So then if that sounds okay, then we'll just move into the next step. Kind of wait to see. Oh,
Sorry,
just
my pen
depend.
died. Go to the drawer and hide them.
So what I thought we could do today, and I want to limit this meeting to just an hour, right? What I thought we could do today is begin identifying some of the tasks that we believe that we need to take on to help us get to the place where we're ready to make a decision with to the school board, or recommendation to the school board. So I threw down, just in some brainstorming, some ideas, but there may be more. This is, my hope is this is a very collaborative process. I just want people to throw out ideas, and that this is a team effort, okay? So I threw out, I think one of the first steps, my idea was to survey staff, survey parents, survey students. And Sage and Kira, I've already kind of put you in responsible for the students. I figured you guys would do that. Then I also was thinking that maybe, you know, what's going to be really important is we say that there's all this research out there, right? But how do we get that in the hands of the public, right? And the parent, make sure that it's not us just saying, oh, we did all of this research and therefore this is our recommendation. I really feel like along the way, we need to be finding a way of communicating with families, with students, to make sure that people also have access to that same research and that same information. So I want to, at some point, really talk about how do we do that and who takes responsibility? And does that involve maybe having a public meeting? You know, do we host a meeting in which we maybe have some professionals here who can talk about mental health and the impact that cell phones will have on mental health? We actually have Lynn Lyons coming, right?
Highly encourage you to attend December 4th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the high school theater. She'll be actually specifically talking about anxiety, stress, and worry, and connect to use of smartphones and social media and all that too, and strategy development for community members and families.
Bless you.
And peers, how to help each other.
So those are just
Always plugging in.
some ideas that I have. Just kind of open this up. For those of you who've been thinking about it, I know, Sage, you and Kira have been thinking about this. Do you have some other ideas and suggestions of things that we should do moving forward?
Yeah, so we sent out, I'm trying to get access to it on my phone. We sent out, yeah, I don't actually, should have brought my computer in. But we sent out a Google form, among other things. The main idea of it was the health center. But we asked how many of them would be interested in attending, kind of like a panel situation that we discussed, where they would have like guided questions, that they would be able to answer to share their opinions on the situation. And I still can't get the exact number, but we had almost 200 responses.
That's way better than the first survey.
Yeah, we did a thing where we made it, we kind of built it into advisory, and we
could scan a QR code that Sage
Yeah.
made.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sage made like a QR code, and so people scanned it and filled out the survey.
The irony about this is you can't really do that unless you had a phone.
yeah, which is kind of, but the idea was that everybody has their phone, so it would be easy to access, which is kind of funny.
Easy though. It makes it so easy.
Yeah.
So it was around like 60 kids said that they would definitely, we gave them yes, no, or maybe, and 60 kids said yes, and then I think it was around like 40-ish said maybe. And then the rest said no, but I felt like that was honestly a pretty good number out of our high school population that was like, yes, I would go and say things at this, so that might be beneficial, maybe.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for doing the preliminary work.
Yeah,
What a great response.
it was a lot, it definitely
Okay.
worked well.
Other ideas?
One thing I saw that might fit well would be making contact with neighbor school districts who may already be doing some of these changes, or not even necessarily in Kennebec County or the local area, but around the state certainly, that you mentioned, Pat, some schools that have already moved forward with this. I know Maranacook, where my girls go to school, have been implementing something like this as well for a year, maybe two. I think it was last year. So getting some information, maybe from some of the other districts that have already had this in place, get their feedback on what's worked, what hasn't.
Could we like possibly like somehow reach out to students from other districts who've like totally banned phones to see their opinions on it? To see if it's like,
So not just the adult perspective.
yeah, cause I didn't Coney fully ban phones?
I don't know. We know that RSU one,
Which is bad.
Bath,
Okay.
they did. We will not be able to survey their student population. But what we can ask them is whether they have done a follow-up survey.
Okay,
And if they have, would they be willing to share that information with us?
okay,
RSU one just did a webinar for people in my position, specifically about, they're only 3 months in, about how their ban is going. And they're using like the pouches and like a
Okay.
true lockdown of phones, which is one approach. And I haven't yet accessed the recording, but it is recorded, so I'm gonna, between now and the next meeting, I'll try to access it, and if it's shareable, I can share it within the committee. If it isn't, I'll take notes and I'll share that with the committee for sure, and I'll see if they had a student perspective.
thank you.
So I can say, offering some student perspective, I work closely with the RISE program, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with what that program is. Yeah. And they do have a much more strict cell phone policy there than the rest of the students do have to put their phones in pouches and aren't able to. And so like a few years ago, there was one student who almost didn't join the program at the idea that they would be separated from their phone while in the program. But seeing the benefit of the program, decided to give it a try, and anyway, so after a little while in the program, got so used to giving up their phone and got so comfortable with not having their phone on them, actually left at the end of the day and forgot to pick up their phone. And didn't get it,
wow.
like just totally forgot, and was fine, totally fine, just like came back like, oh yeah, totally forgot my phone. Like it caused no additional stress. It didn't have any negative impact. And like I said, the students in RISE are functioning all day pretty much without their phones, and they're appreciating it for the most part. Also, I am the staff advisor for the GSDA. And just a few weeks ago, the group wanted to create norms so that our groups would flow more smoothly, and the students pretty much lead it. And one of the norms that the students suggested was to put away your phones during meetings. So it's something that's not just something that adults are asking for. I'm seeing that students are asking for it and they're responding well. So.
Can you define RISE? I'm sorry, I don't know, I'm not familiar.
That's our alternative ed program at the high school.
And it has an acronym.
Yeah.
Reaching,
Respect.
respect.
Respect, inspire.
They just changed it
That's fine.
recently,
It's
so
new.
everybody's
It's a new title.
shifting to the new.
It's
the
a
new title,
lovely
yeah.
title. I
And
haven't,
education.
In education.
yeah,
Respect
Respect.
inspires success in education?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's close.
it's
But
lovely. It's-
I love that you brought that up. So if we were to get some of those students on a panel.
Yeah, because there's
Right.
definitely some that are interested in it, because I've talked to some of my friends about it, and some of them are kind of on board with at least being more strict with this cell phone. I didn't ask about like a complete ban, but like Victoria Tracy.
So would it be helpful just to kind of step back for a moment and ask Jared and then ask Sarah? Talk to us a little bit about the existing practice that's in place regarding cell phone usage at the schools.
Sure, would you like to speak to?
We wanna go, we can go younger to older.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of talk. So when students come into the building, their phone is expected to be off and away. They don't have times during the day that they're allowed to access it, like hallways or the cafeteria. So it's really just off and away during the day. That's not happening. That doesn't happen. It's a constant fight. They have them, they're on. They take them to the bathrooms. Some teachers have some pouches like park your phone here. They've done some great things like getting some chargers so that while the kids are parking their phone, they could charge their phone. That's been a little incentive for them to kind of detach from it. A lot of times students will try to maybe even pick it up on their way to the bathroom to check. Students are aware that they can ask permission, you know what I mean? Hey, I'm waiting for a text from my mom about what's going on after school or who's picking me up. Can I look at my phone? We're very flexible about that. They have access to a phone in every single room in the building that they can ask permission for to use to call. So I think that we do a lot of work, but there's a lot of kids, it's out there. We know it's there. For example, today we had an issue where kids were texting during the day and created some conflict amongst each other that we had to step in because some feelings were pretty big about the things that were said on Snapchat in the bathroom. So there's definitely a layer there that we see. I don't see it a lot at lunch, which is where you would think you might see it a little bit more. I think it's that they're creative in how they're using it. For example, I know yesterday I had a referral that came in that the student had angled it very accurately on the back of their laptop screen and then so that they could type on it. It would make it look like they were doing work. So they're finding ways to access it during the day. But that's kind of what it looks like. It's supposed to be off and away during the day. And then if you need to access it for any reason, you just ask permission, right?
Do you have a general sense of the percentage of students that will violate the policy?
I think it really just depends. We definitely have students who are repeat all the time. We have students that actually leave their phones at the beginning of the day in the office because it has gone that far that we done. We hold it for you. If you need to check it at lunch, come see us and ask permission. Those often are met with a lot of initial resistance. But again, as Beth was kind of saying, after some time, they're kind of like, oh yeah, it's just there. It's actually, I'm able to focus better because I'm not worried about my phone or what's going on or somebody else. But they've also shared, but there's always somebody to share what's going on with me, even though I don't have my phone because everybody else is still checking. It would be interesting, whatever survey I think we use for the high school, I would love to also use for our middle school students. We do know we have less sixth graders that tend to have cell phones than our seventh and eighth graders. Usually somewhere between sixth and seventh grade is where we seem to see an uptick in students accessing cell phones, parents getting them as they kind of branch out and get a little older. I would say most of our seventh and eighth graders have phones. Like today we spent, I think, an hour trying to help a student find their lost phone from when they were outside at recess. And again, supposed to be off and away. But that's real and that's a real panic. So literally for an hour, the student was melting down that they had lost their phone outside somewhere, on the dugout. I'm concerned about what my parents gonna say when they find out. And of course, luckily, I will say, in her defense, the phone was off, which was not helpful in us trying to track down the cell phone. On the flip side of that, right? So there's definitely a lot of layers. The number one thing we see with cell phones is the conflict on social media. Kids feeling that they can say and whatever they want. And that there aren't consequences, and then there are consequences, and then that becomes a layer, and we do a lot of education in the building in a lot of different ways, but it doesn't seem to make the impact, and it just keeps continuing. and all of that. One thing, that's another thought that I was having, it was interesting, it was in one of the articles that we read for today, I know I mentioned it this summer, was online, there was a great thing going around on social media, about this teacher who had students all turn their cell phones on, take them out, turn them on, and they made a list up on the board, was it a text, was it a social snap, was it a this? And every time it dinged, that student got up and went up and marked whatever it was on the sheet. And it was pretty powerful when you looked at the interruptions, and we know there's a lot of research about what one announcement in a building can lose up to 10 minutes of instructional time, right? One announcement over the speakers can lose up to 10 minutes of instructional time. Imagine a student who's getting 30 texts in an hour, right? What that's doing. And so I always come back to that. Mr. Anderson, our STEM teacher, has done some preliminary numbers like that at the beginning of the year to try to encourage students that while you're in STEM, turn them off. And that was met with some big wows from students. So I also wonder if doing kind of some experimentation with students at the high school and middle school on a larger scale might help students have that perspective of why these conversations are important. Like, look at how many you alone got, right, in this 1 hour, and look at what a whole school gets in one day. Could be interesting.
Yeah, I thought about that, so thank you. I do think that we should have staff who are willing to help us do some data collection.
It's pretty powerful,
I bet the high school stats class was like that.
Oh, yeah.
Great idea.
And I love the idea of doing that and some research, and I think another thing that could be really helpful and powerful getting the kids involved in is like a reverse role. And because you're talking about like the lost instruction time, give students an opportunity of like, okay, so you're gonna teach staff for a little bit. And then have us turn our phones on and let our phones interrupt us and have, the difficulty of trying to instruct during that. Because like I said, the GSDA, they run the meetings, I don't. And that was one of the first things they said is they want people to put their phones away because they found it really hard to get through. And our meetings are a half hour. Like, it's not a long time. They found it difficult to get through a half-hour meeting. With people having their phones out. So maybe if we did some like role reversal, so students could also see just the difficulty with maintaining focus and providing any sort of education.
And it's interesting, like I'm a little on the OCD side, for anybody who knows me, things have to be in their place and I have a system for things and I'm flexible too, but there's kind of a thing. I don't have notifications on for anything on my phone other than text messages, because the moment I see red bubbles on any app, I get panicky that I have to clear them. If they're not cleared out, it's because to me that becomes like a to-do list. So I know myself well enough. But I mean, sometimes students will come in with their phones and they literally are sitting there with like hundreds of notifications on one app. And and so some of it too is like, turn the notifications off. It's less temptation. So on that teaching and training side, right? That's a skill there, is like you will have less anxiety if it's not dinging you in the moment
I
too.
don't know if this would help me personally, but
I'll take any help you got from me, Sage.
You can actually turn off in the settings for every app. You can turn off the little red bubble.
That's what I do. They're all off
Okay, yeah.
except for text messages.
Yeah,
That's it.
'cause
The
that's
only
what
one.
I
No,
do
I'm
as
with
well.
you.
Because I
can't.
feel like I have to read everything as well.
See,
so
right, because it's a
have
to-do list. I'm like,
Yeah.
I needed to know that Timu told me that something shipped. That's important. No, I didn't need to know that. So they are off.
So research that I'm really interested in is this idea of like choice and brain development, right? Like, at what point is your brain developed enough to like have choice? And at what point, even in a fully developed brain, does this become an addiction, right? Because spending many, many years in healthcare dealing with alcohol and opiate crisis, like these people are not choosing to be addicted. It's not a behavior necessarily, like you're bad or you require punishment or it's an addiction. And so I think really understanding the difference between like free will and choice and behavior versus something that has crossed an edge. Like, these people that develop these apps and this technology have designed it to be addictive. Just like when we gave children cigarettes and said it's good for you, right? And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, just kidding. But it wasn't like when we said that's not the best choice. how many folks were like, yeah, I would love to stop, but I can't. Right? And so that's where for me, it gets really tricky because there's a difference between like that behavioral choice and like a medical physiological addiction. And I think that research could potentially be really compelling in like understanding where not just students, but adults are coming from. And like, I can't ignore it. And I am having a panic attack if you take it away or if I lose it. Just like if I'm not able to get my next round of medication, or I'm not, one of the things that having an AA meeting in a bar, right? Like it's not,
And that makes me
Tricky.
think there's some research out there too recently about the algorithms that are being used.
Right.
If you look up or it hears you talking about depression, or even picks up your friends talking to you about depression, it starts to show you things that actually create depression in your brain. And so our students are having those conversations with friends, and it might not even be personal, but they're taking it on because now their phone is adjusting to that verbiage, and it is now showing them things like that. And so that, again, on that mental health side, when you said that, that made me reminded me of an article.
It's very scary.
Jared, what about the high school?
Sure. So the high schools, general practice, rules, policies, practice around the cell phones, similar to the middle schools, I would say, not even as quite restrictive as what you folks have. You described your expectation as when they come in, they're off. Whether or not that's happening is the battle we're all fighting. At the high school, the expectation is, as Pat sort of described earlier, that in classes and during class time, the phones are supposed to be put away and not being used unless teachers are greenlighting it for instructional purposes, which at times can happen and does happen. And I've seen students who are very adept at doing their research and working on projects with phones quicker than I would on a phone, certainly, and more at the pace that someone my age might on their laptop, right? They can look things up and they can do things quite quickly with phones. But generally, the expectation is that during the class, they are being used only for instructional purposes, and they are expected to be put away. During passing time, I would say during class time in the hallways, at lunches, in the school setting before the advisory bell, phones are more or less allowed to be used at a student's wish, provided that they're using them appropriately. And the challenge, of course, comes when we get to those areas where they're not being used appropriately, being used, again, to potentially antagonize each other or gather information or share information that's frustrating or upsetting for other students. That kind of, what we would call the Snapchat drama, that kind of stuff, but also sometimes, in the similar vein, wanting to take pictures of other kids for Snapchat, things like that, right? Things that we deal with. So, but in terms of policy and practice, there is an expectation that they be put away during class. And I would say, in full transparency, that the level to which that's being enforced varies, because of the challenge of fighting that battle, choosing your battles. These are all different things that I think we're all kind of battling, in the setting, in the time of day, depending on the situation. So, but generally speaking, that is the expectation.
Jared, you made me think, because you guys have it just a little bit different. When I was in Alexandria, Virginia, in an inner city school, we used a red light, green light, yellow light system in zones of cell phone use, and they were posted everywhere. This is a yellow zone. You may look at your phone, but you may not be talking on your phone, listening to music. You know what I mean? At lunch was more of a green zone. You're still not allowed to make phone calls, but you're allowed to listen to music with headphones, right? Like there were like these general outlines. And it was met really responsively, but it took a lot of initial setup of going over the rules and clear expectations and what that looks like to get there. But kids were responsive to that because we were giving them some carrot an ownership, right, and some voice in it, while also, you know, giving them the respect, like in the classroom, this is a red zone, cell phones are up, and they had cubbies, they would stick them in. And then again, if the teacher wanted to use it for something, they could get it, but that did help some, so maybe something to consider, you know what I mean, when we're just having some discussions.
What was that in middle school? I'm sorry.
It was pre-K 8, 1,900 children.
Sage, did I describe that fairly accurately from
Yeah.
your perspective, or do you guys see it different?
So in my classes, sometimes it depends on the teacher. Like with a couple of my teachers, it's like bell to bell, you don't have your phone out at all, but some of them are a little bit more lenient. And also, like in the classes where it's more like work time, like the teacher teaches and then you like work on an assignment, you're allowed to have like your music or something. So it varies on the level of enforcement. And also, I think there's kind of like two sides to it because because I take honors and AP classes, so kids want to be there and they want to learn. Like that's kind of the whole thing behind that. Generally they don't go on their phone, but also it's kind of like sometimes they get that little superiority complex. I want to say it's a little less than that, but like I'm considered responsible, so I can be responsible and I can use my phone whenever I think I can, you know, kind of like that. So it's a very difficult situation because it's so diverse. There's so many parts of it.
Yeah, in my classes too, it really varies because some of them it's like no phones at all, and then other ones it's like, if you're done your work, you're fine to use a phone. But I do find that some people are like don't benefit from that as much because some people really do specific types of work better with music, and some teachers that don't allow music, it really makes it hard, like especially when we're doing like timed writes and people are talking. Like this happened to me the other day. The teacher just talks during the time writes and she's not supposed to, but she does. So it's like helping a student with the assignment or whatever, but it just distracts me and makes my time write like worse. So that it would help me if I had like some instrumental jazz going on into that.
Yeah.
Just with that.
I have the same thing because like in those classes where you work like more towards the end, kids use that time however they want. So sometimes it's like everybody's talking and I don't have enough time to have this be homework, so I need to get it done like this class. So I put in like my noise canceling headphones and I listen to some instrumental.
And then I don't know if this is correct, but I think it was with students with ADHD, they work way better with music. I think that might have been a study that I saw. It was some students work better with music, but I think the group was ADHD. But I feel like that's also important to like take into consideration. It does help some kids. And it's not like in the grown-up world, they're gonna be banned all the time. Because at some jobs, you can listen to music whenever you want. If it's just like in a earbud or something.
And we do have, some students do have access to music in their IEPs, because there are some students that do benefit from that. So that
Okay,
is-
Oh, but I just need the old Walkmans, I guess.
Yeah. Get a Discman.
I feel like there still are some like
Do you guys
students
know
though who don't have an
about that?
IEP
Yes.
that would still benefit.
They're like, yes, we saw it on the 80s show and 70s show, it was very old.
So my mom talks about she had to sit in front of her radio and wait for
Record
songs
the
to come
song.
on and record them.
It's a
so they could
silly
play them.
story. We live out in the woods and my son was back exploring in the woods and he must have found a place where people were dumping some trash at some point who lived there. And he brought out an old school boom box and goes, which was like, and he goes, Dad, look what I found. I found this antique. I wonder what it does. And my husband was like, for real?
So there are some great ideas. I think the next step is to maybe start assigning individuals to some of these tasks of things that we can do to start moving forward.
I had one other suggestion, well, probably more than one. It'd be great if we could get some actual data on like the impact of cell phone use. So I don't know if we could do a snapshot of a month, but how many mental health referrals come in where there's some sort of cell phone use, particularly during the school day, I would assume we'd want to narrow it to, had an impact as part of the referral. And then how many referrals are there, how many times are you searching the field or, taking staff's time to manage a problem? Because all of that, it is instructional loss, certainly, but it's also, there's real dollars behind every single staff person's time. And if you're spending, 15 staff hours a week on this sort of thing, that translates into real consequences. So it'd be great to get that instead of only having anecdotal information from a survey, because I feel like, yes, those viewpoints, the qualitative, it's going to be helpful, but it'd be nice to have it be actual data that's maybe a snapshot of a month. And then another would be really trying to get what is the training or education or norming practices that are done at each school. I mean, it sounds like there isn't necessarily a formalized, here's how we set the stage for good learning to happen. And that is there a shared expectation that all teachers, sort of commit to and teach their students? And if not, do we want to consider that? And then, when it comes to taking a look at, potential policies, taking a look at, are there graduated approaches, and are there other school districts that have found that? And what could we pull potentially from there or not?
I don't know if this is plausible, but could we like possibly do like trial runs of different like solutions? Like maybe have like a month where we do like a full ban. And then like a month where it's like more lax or something. And I feel like that gives it enough time for people to like kind of ease off of their phones.
Yeah. Well, that would be really interesting, especially if you were collecting, if you kept it like just don't do anything for a month and collect the data on how many referrals, how many staff hours, how many impacted kids, et cetera. And then you do a month with, maybe a ban and then for 6 weeks or whatever, but allow 2 weeks for adjustment and then collect a month of data and compare, because staff hours may be dramatically different between the two of those, or maybe there's not that much of an impact.
Or like even we could like do some student perspective on it. Like, do you feel less anxiety? Like, do you feel like less apt to like be checking your phone all the time? Like, is it impacting you in a positive or negative way? I feel like that would be I feel like that would also help if we did come to the decision of a full ban, for students to be more okay with it, because they know that like they were taken into consideration more, because they directly like would answer a survey and be like, yeah, this affected me this way.
A couple of things I think about is like stamina. So we see this in the early ages, but it's different in the middle and high school ages, right? If you're constantly distracted and distracting yourself because there's information, it's hard to attend to a task for a period of time. And there is some evidence that's suggesting that we're losing our ability to have a deep focus or a longer term focus. So that's a piece for me, coming from like teaching and learning side over here. That's something I'm also really interested in understanding, perspective, but also reality. And then our ability to have dialogue with one another. I don't know, because I'm not in the 6 through 12 space inside classrooms on all the time. So I don't know if in our spaces, our students struggle with like casual conversations and dialogue outside of their core friend group. Whereas in some places, you read articles and stuff and they're saying kids are having a really hard time having the go to a dinner party and you have a little chat, what's that called?
Small talk,
Say it again.
small talk?
Small talk, yes, I just, this is lovely that it's recorded. Yes, you know, starting up with the small talk or having connections that don't require first the, you know, some sort of engagement on the device. So I'd be curious about the impact that has on having these like engaged, embodied experiences with other people. Those are really, really important life skills, and we don't want to erode those because we're so determined to have the interaction here instead of here. So those are a couple things, you know, and I don't know that data collection is going to be that easy on that, so that might need to be perspective in data collection around perspectives, observers, as well as those engaged. So I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to your recommendation of whether we could do a trial run and do a ban for a month. There are pros and cons to that, so I think we need to explore it. And certainly have more conversations regarding it and wrap in our administrators as well, because they would be the ones that would have to put that in place and deal with that. So I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I do want us to come out of this with some defined tasks for our next meeting, okay? So there's a lot here that's not going, we cannot accomplish all of this, of course, by the next meeting, but at least I want us to be able to identify some things that we can produce and be available to talk about next time. So we have an administrative team meeting tomorrow, and I will place this on the agenda. Sarah will be there, Jared will be there, and we'll be able to kind of summarize what this conversation was. The two things that I will ask administrators to discuss specifically goes back to the teacher data collection, right? Can we do that? How can we do that? How broadly can we do that? And the other one is the data on the cell phone use and its impact. What could that look like? How could we begin collecting data? And if we are able to collect data, are we able to delineate between a mental health issue, a student conflict, right? Those types of things. So we'll work on that, and I'll try to bring that information back. And if we're able to begin implementing a pilot, I'll certainly let you know and let you know what that will look like.
I can talk with Jim, Meg, and Ari, and we can start kind of tracking how much cell phones are kind of coming up in our sessions and the social work.
That would be,
to help with that mental health.
Yeah,
and
that would be
conflict,
great.
because, you know, we deal with a lot of that, of course.
yeah, you absolutely do. In administration, like, you know, you both articulated that you deal with social media issues on a daily basis. So tracking time, I think you'll have to estimate, right? Give an estimate of the amount of time that you have, but 15 hours a week, it's far greater than that. It really can be significant. You can have an administrator who's working 10 hours a day, and that's all they dealt with on a particular day.
Yep.
So, yeah.
But I would think Sue too in our building, Sue Oakland.
Yeah,
Because she
and
does-
Susan and Phil in our building, yeah, I
Yeah.
can talk.
And I
with
was
the
just
whole
thinking
counseling
too, I know we have 2 Spurwink counselors that have full caseloads and wait lists. And I know that they do a lot of that too. I'm sure they'd be willing to tally information. I don't know your Spurwink. I know you have somebody new this year.
We have an intern.
Okay, but I wonder if, you know, they too, if it's not anything other than kind of tallying, right? So I bet, I would imagine that ours would be more than willing to help tally that. If you just let me know what you want it to look like.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would be willing to do the same.
Right, so those are 2 tasks that we can follow up on.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, just really quickly, that anything that we decide on, I think we need to remember the teachers, because every time I have this conversation with my mom, she's a teacher, she always emphasizes that sometimes the enforcing of the policy is put on the teachers, and they have to keep on reprimanding and saying, put down your phone, I'm gonna take your phone away, and the student is like, no, I don't want you to, and they're like, go to the office, no, I don't want to, and so that also takes away from learning time and teaching time. So it would be great if we could find some way that kind of supersedes teacher enforcement and is just kind of from the get-go.
I think
Okay.
some of the schools have been going with like the pouches and stuff, because it does take that away from the teachers having to do that.
Right, it's just up.
Except
It's
that
just
the
up.
students are finding a way to bring alternative phones.
Yeah, we have students with multiple phones who might even be leaving, there's one phone in the office, and now we're finding out they have a second phone.
So
Yeah.
creative.
Can you
They're
take
very
watch, I
creative.
mean, if you're not gonna take a watch off, then.
It would have to be the same thing.
Yep,
right? It would be All
smartwatches.
electronics,
Right.
right?
And then can you access, I'm not that technologically advanced, but can you access text messages and all of these apps on a computer? I mean, if you're on your school
Some of
computer.
them.
Sort of depends.
That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole different
Yeah.
layer.
There's students who have lost their phones while
Terry.
often communicating through Google Docs, you know.
Oh my God.
And then there's the chat, and then,
Yeah,
I mean,
that,
No.
the email has a
Share a
chat
doc
feature,
and I
they
can
can
have
chat too.
I can have my text conversation right through my.
I used to
Google
do
Chat.
that in middle school with my friends, but
Okay.
I didn't think that was like a.
Oh, it's still.
They still do it, yeah, there.
So what about survey? If we're going to survey different populations, different stakeholders, can someone begin or multiple people begin drafting a survey? What types of questions should we ask? And I wonder if there are other schools, they've already done this work. Can we
Yes. sir.
borrow a survey? I know RSU1, for example.
So I wonder if there's two steps. The first step is asking us to reach out to schools in the state who have been doing this and see if we can get the adult perspective and the student perspective. So RSU1 is certainly a clear
Mhm.
example. Marana Cook you've addressed, and then there's some others. And if they have surveys already, and bring them to the table so that we can look at them. I worry about asking someone to create a survey and then finding that we have like all these
Right.
pre-created surveys, which I didn't think of before this
Yeah,
meeting when I
yeah.
chatted, but now I have.
What if we check with Tony Veet about what they're doing at Coney, cause he's the social worker over at Coney?
Right, I mean, we could create a list and then look at our context and divide and conquer
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
pull it back together so that we could have, by school, this is where they're at, and we could kind of all look at that. Maybe we could even attach it to the agenda. So we had it coming into the meeting, depending on the time frame. When is the next meeting?
We haven't set the next meeting because I wanted to set the meeting with everyone here. I'm not sure what people's schedules are, so thought we could do that collaboratively. And if we could just choose a day of the month at a set time, and then we'll plan on it every single month.
I had a really quick question about me and Kira's survey. We're scheduled to release another one like right after the December board meeting. Do you want us to avoid putting any cell phone topics on it just so it doesn't like skew any data from like the official cell phone survey that will go out to the high school?
Maybe even a
Yeah.
more broad question might be, would you want to hold off on that in general so that you don't get kind of survey fatigue?
Yeah, so we could just
Yeah.
not do our December one?
Yeah, especially it's a holiday,
I don't-
right? People are busy.
I don't know what you think, that was kind of a thought I
Do you
had.
have a feeling about that?
When are we gonna release the survey for this committee? Because I personally like filling out forms. And I know a lot of people like doing that and it like an advisory, like just I don't know, people like forms. So I don't know if people would necessarily get surveyed out, but that's just my perspective.
Well, I don't know the answer. It will depend when we're able to reach out to the other schools, collect any information that they have available that they're willing to share. So if they have surveys already created, we hopefully, I mean, I don't know if that's
Just
something
adjust
you
the
do
survey
or-
to what we're looking for. I
Yeah,
think it would be much easier.
if we
than
could
just
look
having-
2 or 3 and then we can
Yeah,
make it our own using their
own,
questions.
based on this broad perspective.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be the only one to design the survey because I'd want all of your perspectives
Right.
at the table, but if we had something to start with, it's easier. Especially if we know like, did you have a good return rate? Do you feel
Right.
like it was helpful in informing your decision?
All right, so I'm not certain how we're going to proceed at this point. are we going to have Jared reach out to RSU 38
Well, I think-
or?
I think, what if, I don't wanna assign, but what if
That's a sign,
Sarah
okay.
and Jared and I, since Beth picked up the social work piece, what if the three of us share a Google Doc? And we list our schools and we divide up who's gonna speak to
Okay.
which school, and we start compiling that information, so then we can share it with the broader group in advance of our next meeting. And then that will, if there's surveys, we can link those in, and then we can bring those to the table for a survey discussion at our next meeting. I know you were hoping to have a survey, but I feel like if we can use someone else's, it still will be more efficient.
I completely agree.
In terms of research, I think we have an opportunity, but maybe after we get the survey going, then start digging into the research. You have research here on a list, and you also, I need to start using people's names.
Yeah, I have the
Kristen,
So
you
it's sort of
also
like
choice
new
addressed.
research that you're
Right.
thinking about gathering, and then there's lots of extensive research that's
In
been
the
done
field.
that
Right.
can be helpful in sort of supporting
Mhm.
decisions.
If you could, Christian, in your field, your recommendation, like brain development, choice,
Yeah, I'm
addiction,
happy
if
to-
you could do a little digging and find some research on that, that would be helpful. I don't want to do too much. It's only, if the
Yeah.
holidays are here, we're going to be
Yeah.
busy, so to think we're going to accomplish tons in the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks is unfair.
And I think one of our last steps will be, as we come to an agreement as a team of what sort of direction we wanna head in, then we can pull up policies. What's our current policy? What are some policies other districts are using or have adapted? And then how does that influence our recommendation around policy? So that we don't miss that piece.
So looking at my calendar. How about,
As we all bring up our phones.
We all reach for our cell phones.
No, no.
right, I'm looking
Wait
at
for
the-
it.
Oh, look at you.
2024 and 2025.
Yes, my husband also has a different.
Where did I get these? On Amazon.
I have a plan of
They
this.
Looking at the
they still
third
exist.
Wednesday of the month at 3:00. Now, the problem with that date is that the third week is always vacation week, so we'll run up against that with February break, we'll run up against it in April, with April break. So if people are okay in us modifying the week, like in February, I could do the fourth Wednesday, if people could make that work. How does that look?
I can make it work, I
Third.
just, yeah, if we have staff meetings and team leader meetings every Wednesday, but I'll make it work one way or the other. Hope's pretty awesome, so I think she can handle it.
Okay, all right,
It's just our PD days, so I just won't be there to support. So
every Wednesday?
every Wednesday after school it alternates, staff meeting, team leader, staff PD, team leader, so every Wednesday.
I could also do the second Monday.
Mondays are definitely better for me.
Okay.
Same.
I know, I was like, don't say second Tuesday, if I already got something
I
every
know,
second
don't
Tuesday and
say
third
No,
Tuesday,
Tuesdays don't
fourth
work well for
Tuesday.
me. Now, the second Monday in December is the 9th. That doesn't give us a lot of time.
And I will probably not be able to make the 9th specifically because it is the rescheduled adoption day, so for my son. Yeah, so I will
How about the
definitely not be there.
16th? December 16th, and then we can do the second Monday at 3:00, starting in January.
Works for me.
Is that?
So good.
Cell phone committee. So 3 PM is 1 hour, good. I mean, if we have to go over, but We want to be respectful of everyone's time. Okay, so we'll try to limit it to 1 hour. All right, save. And then- So in January, it'll be the 13th. Does anyone need an invitation, the calendar invitation?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was like, if you're making one, please send it, so I.
Okay, I will do that for
Thank you.
everyone. Okay, you are welcome.
Sort of that's on there, always.
Okay, and this will repeat every monthly on the second Monday. Okay. I will try to get that out to you before I leave today, okay? Otherwise I'll forget. All right. Anything else? I think this was productive. I feel like it was productive. I hope
a
you
good
feel the
start.
same. Yeah. I'm sorry, I just was not able to pull this committee together before now.
I just have one more question. What are Sage and I doing for our survey? Are we not doing it or are we
We're
avoiding?
not doing it right now. We're going to collect information from the other schools. And if they are able to provide us with samples of the surveys that they used, we will collect that and use it to kind of guide our survey development
Okay.
for
Different
students, parents,
Oh, so
and
we
staff.
can, so we can do different topics, just not
If
phones
they
or
wanna
just
do
no
something on a
survey
different
at all?
topic for the,
Oh,
they're
for
doing a monthly
December,
survey.
gotcha, yeah, you, just a different
Okay.
topic if you wish.
Okay.
Just kind of stay
And-
away from cell phones, so we'll inundate them with that on
And
that
it
topic.
looks like we'll need to follow up on whether we wanna have a student panel
I
and
think it would
access
be
that
really
data,
well
yeah.
received if we
Okay.
choose.
Yeah, cause it's a common topic, like,
Yeah.
it's talked about, like, I hear it at least a few times a week.
And we were saying that we're committed to hearing from the students, so we would have students who are interested and not interested in locking down cell
Yeah.
phones in some way, right?
And it would
Like,
help
not
if
just
we give
students
them
who are.
guided
Yeah,
questions,
there's
so it
passion on
didn't
like both sides.
get, you know,
Right,
out of control at all.
Right.
It would just be certain questions.
Yeah, a guided,
Yeah, a
facilitated-
guided discussion.
not a debate.
No,
but a- yeah.
no, a guided discussion.
I think that would be interesting.
and I think it'd be really important to bring the RISE students in, yeah.
Have like a diverse group of
Yeah.
students based on the.
I can talk to
100
Michelle about
that
that
have
tomorrow
offered.
as well.
Okay, that'd be great.
Great.
All right, thank you all. See you in December. Have a nice Thanksgiving holiday.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Um,
Terry, thank you very
Mrs.
much.
Arnold had said that she wanted to talk about that.